This episode is sponsored by NordProtect. In a world where data breaches are on the rise and identity theft is becoming more common, you have to take steps to protect yourself. NordProtect offers you everything you need to keep your identity safe, all in one easy place. It's built to help you safeguard your identity with advanced automation that works 24/7 on your behalf. Things like dark web monitoring, credit monitoring, security alerts, and more. And if the worst should occur, the platform walks alongside you for identity restoration. NordProtect plans come with financial coverage across a wide range of threats, from identity theft to online fraud and scams, so you are covered when it matters most. Get an exclusive 5% discount on NordProtect plans. Go to nordprotect.com/codestory and use the code CODESTORY at checkout. You can also find the link in the episode notes. That's nordprotect.com/codestory.
Luckily, the blockchain component is actually optional. We're taking what we can from that technology and applying those benefits to identity. We've been operating, in stealth for 2 to 3 years, and our plan is to have the MVP out to the market before the end of this year, with a closed beta happening a little bit earlier. Internally, we're using open source toolkits that we develop ourselves and try and leverage the open source toolkits that are out there. We build each day knowing that we could throw away yesterday's great idea in favor of today's great idea. I have the philosophy of fail early, fail often, but also fail gracefully. You're doing well as a team if you can do that, overcome those obstacles, and then pull together a better solution than where you started. I'm Craig Sellars, co-founder and CEO of Self.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries.
Spent 6 months moonlighting.
There's nothing on the back end.
Who share what it takes to change an industry.
I don't exactly know what to do
Took
next.
many goes to get right.
Who built the teams that have their back.
The company is its people.
The teams help each other achieve. I was proud of our team.
Keeping scalability top of mind.
All that infrastructure was
Yes, we've been fighting it as we grow.
Total waste of time. The stories you don't read in the headlines.
It's not an easy thing to achieve, mind
Took
you.
it off the shelf and dusted it off and tried it again.
To ride the ups and downs of the startup life.
You need to really
It's
want it.
not just about technology.
All this and more on Code Story. I'm your host, Noah Lapark, and today how Craig Sellars is creating the standard of internet identity, empowering you, the person, to access your digital genome. Craig Sellars grew up near Atlanta, Georgia, and was interested in technology at an early age. He went to Georgia Tech to get his degree, and after spending many years in industry, he jumped into the blockchain in 2013. But outside of tech, he used to do competitive four-way formation skydiving. He mentioned this was like synchronized swimming, but in the air. Nowadays, he enjoys long road trips into the sunset. Craig has created well-known solutions in the blockchain space, notably the Tether stablecoin and the first-ever NFT platform. Throughout his tenure in this space, he has learned that you, the user, is the most valuable asset in the world. And in learning that, he wanted to pursue building the standard of internet identity. This is the creation story of Self.
I'm one of the co-founders of Tether, the largest stablecoin in the world. We formed that company in 2014. Shortly thereafter, built the very first NFT platform of Atomic Systems. It evolved into something called Block V, and then became its final state in Vatom.com. We didn't call them NFTs back then. Honestly, we called them either autonomous digital objects or uniquely identifiable tokens. NFT as a nomenclature caught on a little bit after that. And learned during that process that you were the most valuable asset in the world. You are unique, and you were in fact a non-fungible token. We wanted to build an early stage prototype for what an open source identity protocol might look like, and then came together with some leading entrepreneurs in the space to come together and form Self. Our product is twofold. The first part is an open source community standard. We call it MDIP, or Multidimensional Identity Protocol. The goal is to set the standard for the Internet of Identity, as we call it. The second part is actually the Self application, front end and interfaces that allows individuals to interact with that growing network of interconnected digital identities. We started building it after learning some pretty valuable lessons in the blockchain space regarding self-sovereign ownership of value. And that extends into the management and ownership of what we call identity assets, the information that makes you both unique and valuable.
let's dive into what you would consider the MVP of Self, right? And maybe that's where you are today. Maybe you're a little bit further along, but I'm curious about the first version of Self. How long did it take you to build, and what sort of tools are you using to bring it to life? Obviously, there's going to be a heavy blockchain influence there, but I'm excited to dive in.
Luckily, the blockchain component is actually optional. We're taking what we can from that technology and applying those benefits to identity. We've been operating, in stealth for 2 to 3 years, building a variety of prototypes. And our plan is to have the MVP out to the market before the end of this year, with a closed beta happening a little bit earlier. Like I said, 2 to 3 years to get to this stage. Internally, we're using open source toolkits that we develop ourselves, or those from common third parties like libp2p, IPFS, blockchain tools like Bitcoin, its derivatives, and Ethereum style blockchains like EVM. We use ClickUp internally for our road mapping and task and project management, and try and leverage the open source toolkits that are out there. We're building both iOS and Android applications, browser extensions, APIs for third parties to integrate with, and then the open source daemon software that manages the protocol itself.
So, I hear you saying it took you a few years to get to this point. You built some prototypes and some different ideas, and I'm certain that there's some, things that you learned or some decisions and trade-offs you had to make throughout that process. Tell me about maybe one or two of those and how you coped with those decisions, or what were the big things you took away as learnings?
There's always decisions and trade-offs that you make in software engineering. It's an iterative development process. Build each day knowing that we could throw away yesterday's great idea in favor of today's great idea. And we can't know as a startup if we made the right decision until we sort of test and iterate and pressure test those technologies. We cope with it by keeping everyone's ego in check and applauding successes, applauding failures just as much. I have the philosophy of fail early, fail often, but also fail gracefully. You're doing well as a team if you can do that, overcome those obstacles, and then pull together a better solution than where you started.
So this will be interesting, given you're going to release the MVP later. I'm curious about, when you get to the point where you release, how are you going to progress it and mature it? And it may be a little early, but maybe forecast that a little bit to me. And I'm curious about, even today, how you decide what is next most important, or what is most important to do next for Self.
We always are making accommodations and adjustments to the protocol and the software based on market feedback. Things like more decentralization, making tools more API friendly to accommodate those integrators and developers. Again, it's that iterative process. We're building our roadmap. We start by, let's say, identifying the core value proposition, like identifying the core functionality that fulfills that value prop, writing high-level requirements for the functionality, development, design, testing, and deployment. We then groom those requirements with the engineering team, and then we prioritize that work in our roadmap, like according to engineering lifts, the in-team expertise, the customer value, that market feedback. And again, in that iterative process, just make it more accommodating and more useful every step along the way.
I'm curious about team. This is a pretty unique skill set and a cutting edge, thing that you're building. I'm curious about how you have built your team, and what do you look for in those people to indicate that they're the winning horses to join you?
I guess at a baseline, we balance perhaps what people know, what they're bringing to the table, what they want to know. I guess we can trust if they're willing to learn what they don't know. But I think most importantly is, what do they enjoy doing? How do you best highlight their talents and their goals? How do you make an effective team where people do feel empowered and they have the ability to deliver their talents, what they're best at?
So tell me about maybe team culture. How do you maintain a team culture of delivery? How do you align people to the right spot? And I hear some of that, but how do you create that team culture where we're going after Self and everybody's tuned into that mission?
Well, the fun part of developing an identity system is that you recognize that everyone on the planet is in fact unique. They have their own preferences in terms of privacy, in terms of how they communicate. And one of our goals itself is to be as accommodating to everyone on the team as possible, to make sure there's transparency across different parts of the organization, so that everyone is apprised of everyone else's status and their goals, and that anyone can approach anyone else to ask questions, propose alternatives, provide recommendations, and just be empowering to the diversity of those teams. Because again, we focused on what people enjoy doing and what they're good at. And we feel that people, if they can express that to one another and feel comfortable doing so, it really impacts the team culture and morale positively.
So let's flip to scalability. And this will be interesting. Given, your track record and the things that you've built, this is a little early, maybe with Self, to talk about scalability, but I'm curious if it's being built with scale in mind, or if you predict there's going to be areas where you're going to have to fight it as you grow.
I mean, we always have questions about how to best overcome stability concerns. One of my philosophies is to design things as simply as possible, even if their permutations can become complex. If they're set on a very simple set of rules, it makes it easier to develop and deploy. We always strike a balance between scalability and decentralization, which is one of our other core premises. For example, you don't want to put all the data in the world as transactions on blockchains. That's too expensive, it's too slow. But you can use decentralized technologies like IPFS and Peerbit to allow for really fast transactions, really fast communication between peers, and making sure the organization is also adaptable to, again, those market conditions. We want the most available tools for the community, but the ability to scale to a worldwide solution, there are going to be billions of people who will need digital identities, and any system that connects all of them has to accommodate that. And it has to accommodate that early on, because you can't really build in scalability after the fact. It has to be thought about on day one when you first deploy it.
Okay, Craig, as you step out on the balcony, you look across all that you've built. What are you most proud of?
One, it's the teams that I've been able to work with, just the super high caliber, the ethics and the morals and the talent that I've been blessed and very lucky to work with. The thing probably most proud of is what we've learned, how we want to deliver the best possible solution, how we have a team that's committed and focused together on innovation. I think the ability to adapt to the lessons learned and to apply those best practices, I think it's one of our greatest strengths as a team. And then building the positive team, a talented team that are all working together to fulfill the vision, and being able to do not only in a past track record, but looking forward as well. That's always the goal, is that cohesiveness, the appreciation for innovation, and just a love of quality.
Let's flip the script a little bit. I want to focus on Self here. Tell me about maybe a mistake you've made and how you and your team responded to it.
Okay, so we've been doing this for 2 or 3 years together, and we've evaluated a number of different software packages. Now, some of our original expectations on which of those tools were ready for prime time caused us to bang our heads for a couple months at a time and spin our wheels, probably mostly in the first year. We'd assumed that certain third-party tech was ready for prime time. It took more time than I would have appreciated or I would have hoped for to assess those strengths and weaknesses. And we've, again, cycled through a number of those proposed alternatives. We've now had to build some internally. Coming to that conclusion earlier would have meant that we would be to market earlier. But at the same time, it's better to run into those mistakes early than run into them after the fact. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a mistake, but it's definitely a lesson learned is make sure you're doing your due diligence on the tools you expect to use and making sure that they satisfy the requirements early on.
This will be fun. You've already mentioned some of it with the launch of the MVP, but I'm curious, maybe to that point and even after, what does the future look like for Self, the product, and for your team?
We honestly believe that things like decentralized identity, single sign-ons, etc., will be adopted by everyone and everything. Everything in the world will be tokenized. Eventually, that will include your identity assets, those things, the information that you co-create with third parties. And our goal is to put it into what we call the digital genome, which is, in essence, the atoms and molecules that make up your identity, the attributes about yourself that are valuable, and then empowering the user, the identity itself, to decide who gets to see that information. I think that's an inevitability that the market will see. And our goal is to provide the best in-class applications for not just the protocol itself, but for the tools that we give to users and individuals to empower them with that information.
Okay, Craig, let's switch to you. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person or many persons or something you look up to and why.
Besides the members of my team who obviously knock my socks off every day of every week, I look back to Steve Jobs, Alan Turing, people who really did push the envelope early on. Steve Jobs was uncompromising in delivering to the market a product that far exceeded the expectation of the customers, right? His ability to drive a team of innovators to produce their best possible work. That's who I admire the most in the business space, only because he's been so successful. He only delivered the things that he and his team were proud of. And I like to emulate that kind of success.
This will be interesting. We talked about a mistake and the due diligence, but I'm curious if you could go back to the beginning. What would you do different? Or where would you consider taking a different approach? It doesn't have to be a mistake. Could have been something that worked pretty well. But maybe you tweak it a little bit.
We experimented a lot early on and didn't necessarily follow the best software engineering practices where you define the requirements really robustly and early. We've gotten around that with a robust product team and development team to get things into that proper cadence. I would have defined those requirements a tad bit more accurately earlier on, let's say 24 months ago as opposed to 12 months ago. But I think implementing a more structured product development process is where you end up. And each step along the way needs to be very well defined and documented. And then, of course, communicated across the entire spectrum of teams within the organization. I would have done that a little bit differently, only to make it easier for documentation, what we share with third-party integrators, respond to their questions effectively. I think we've gotten into that cadence now, but that's always something you can improve upon.
Craig, last question. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit several times?
Well, if they've built the next big thing, it's all about making sure that the market is aware of it. If the world doesn't know the great things you've made, it doesn't get adopted as virally as you would like. You want to focus on what the market needs further down the line than just tomorrow. Anybody can iterate on an existing solution and provide a better alternative. I guess those who really do make the mark are those who are looking much further into the future. There's an expression that I use that if you're riding the crest of the wave, your vantage point is much better than when you're behind that wave, where all you can see is just a big wall of water. You want to be at the top of that wave looking out ahead of you so that you can guide those behind you.
That's fantastic advice. Well, Craig, thank you for being on the show today, and thank you for telling the creation story of self.
Thank you, Noah, for having us. Much appreciated.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
Some of the best lessons don't come from a classroom. They come from experience. On The Power of Advice, a new podcast series from Capital Group, you'll hear from CEOs, investors, and founders about how they built careers, took risks, and reinvented themselves. If you're starting your own journey, this is the kind of advice you won't want to miss. Available wherever you get your podcasts. Published by Capital Client Group, Inc.